All right, so now it's time to set up our environment. We're gonna create a new repository with Git. We're gonna set up our NPM project, our Node.js project, and we're gonna set up our first file. So if you wanna go ahead and open source tree, and the first thing that you wanna do is hit this create button. And again, if you like to use a different Git GUI or you like to use the command line, that's totally fine. There will be some differences, but hopefully it's obvious enough that you'll be able to follow along. So hit create and click this browse button, go to the folder that you want to create your project in. So I'm going to select this folder and actually, sorry, I'm going to create a new folder. We're going to call this Pokedex API. And I'm going to leave the project name as Pokedex API, leave this as Git, and go ahead and hit create. It says the destination already exists, and yes, I do want to create that. Okay, so now we've created our Git repository. We haven't added anything to it yet. And sorry, I think I haven't explained what Git is for those of you who don't know. Git is what's called a version control system. And what it helps us do is keep track of version changes in our code. And there's some unique language along with Git. You may have heard the word commit or pull, push, fetch, merge. But if you haven't been familiarized with Git yet, hopefully this will help. I won't go into a lot of depth with this. There's a lot of great courses out there for Git. So if you need a little extra help, go ahead and look one of those up. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to initialize our Node.js project. So if you just open up your terminal or command line, in Windows, it's called command prompt. And what you'll want to do is you'll want to type cd and then go to the directory that your project is in. So mine is in documents, code, Pokedex API. Then you'll type npm, which stands for Node Package Manager, init, or initialize. And it has a few prompts for you. Package, anything in parentheses is just the default. So if you hit enter without typing anything in, that's what it'll do. I think most of these we can just hit enter. For entry point, don't hit enter on that because we want to change it to app.js. If you happen to hit enter too fast, don't worry, we can change it later. And then I think the rest of these, you can type in your name if you want. For author, a license, up to you. I like to use the MIT license. Once you get past license, it'll ask if all that information is correct. If it is, just type yes, and you're good to go. The next thing we want to do is we're going to install some Node packages, some JavaScript code that other people have written so that we don't have to write it ourselves. First thing we're going to install is called Express. So type npm install express, and I like to put save --save at the end. So hit enter, that'll install, and you're good with that. All right, now if you're following along with the guide in the repository, we're on step 1. We just installed Express.js. Now we're going to create our first file. So go ahead and open Sublime, and we're going to first, actually, you know what, before I start doing this, I'm going to save this file. So make sure you save it in your main folder. I'm going to save it as app.js. Now, like I said, if you hit enter through that entry point index.js, just go ahead into your main folder, open this package.json in Sublime Text. You can just drag it, and you'll see the main. Mine says app.js. That's what you want. Yours might say index. If you want to keep it index, you can keep it index. Just make sure you save this file as index.js, not app.js. So the first thing that we'll add into app.js is we're going to import Express. So I'll explain what all this is. If you're not familiar with this syntax, const, hopefully you know what that is. If you don't, it's just a constant variable, meaning, well, sorry, it's just a constant called Express. It's never going to change. We're never going to reassign it. And then require just imports any package or any other code that maybe we've written or someone else has written. So we're just going to import Express into that Express constant. And the next thing we'll do is create a constant called app. We'll just do that. So we're just going to call Express. And now app is what we're going to use to build the REST API. The next thing we want to do is a port. I'm going to use port 3000. That's the one I have in the example. You can use not any port, but most ports above 3000 are safe to use. Up to you what you want to do there. Then we're going to build our first endpoint. So to do that, we do app.get. We're going to just call this, we're not going to keep this for our Pokedex because we don't really need it, but this is just to test it. So we're going to call this endpoint hello. And let's see, okay, so I'll explain what this syntax is here. Basically, we're just using our app. We're creating a Git endpoint. You may remember from a couple videos ago, I explained the different types of endpoints. There's Git, Post, and Put, as well as some others. So this one is just going to be, the client is going to send a request to this endpoint to get some data back. And then in here, so the first parameter is the route. So, you know, if you go to any website, for instance, we'll just go to GitHub and you click on, we'll just click on this one. So the route here, this is or I should say the path is everything after the main domain. So everything after GitHub, that's the path. So it's the same kind of thing here. Everything after our path or after our main domain URL is the path. So for us, it's hello. And then the next param is a function that you want to execute when someone sends that request. So in this function, we have two parameters. And the first one is the request object. The other one is the response object. So in order to send a response, we just do res.send. And then you put something in here that you want to send back to the client. So we're just going to say classic hello world. And then go a few lines down. This is how we're actually going to start our app.listen, and we're going to put port in here. You could hard code your port number in here, but we're going to use the actual variable. And then we're going to put in here console.log. Let's do Pokedex API listening on port. So if you're not familiar with this, this template string, you can use backticks instead of quotes to insert variables automatically into your string. And then whatever variables or expressions you want to put in, you just wrap them with this $sign and then curly braces. So this is going to tell us Pokedex API listening on port 3000, because that's what port is. Okay, so that's the basic thing for our app. Let's actually test this. So if you go to terminal or command prompt, whatever you use for the operating system you're on, make sure you're in the directory for your project. And we're going to just type in node app.js or index.js if you chose to use that. Hit enter, and there we go, Pokedex API listening on port 3000. Okay, now we'll test the endpoint. So if you go to Postman, and I'm just going to get rid of some of this. Okay, so click the plus sign for a new tab. This is a Git request. So in this dropdown, we'll just make sure Git is selected. And we'll type in localhost. Actually, let's type in HTTP. So this is our address for our API 3000 because we're listening on port 3000. So localhost, that's just our local machine, and then colon, and then the port we're listening on. And now this is where we put the path to our endpoint. So we'll do /hello, and then hit send. And if you see down here in the response, it says hello world. That's exactly what we told it to say. That's never going to change because it's hard coded. But now we know our API is working. So in the next video, we're going to work on setting up different routes. We're going to add actual Pokemon endpoints to return Pokemon.